Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited to welcome an old friend of mine and a former student of mine, actually, Dr. Greg Bottaro, to our channel. Greg, it's a joy to have you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
I was talking to you before we went on here and asked you about the wounds on your head. I said, is that the stigmata of the crown of thorns? What's going on? So you have to
I
tell
wish
the story.
I was on very unsatisfactorily just working on my lawnmower in the driveway, and I was lifting up part of it, and I tripped and fell, and I couldn't stop myself from head diving into the asphalt. So
Well,
that's actually what happened.
you're healing up well, because I saw an earlier version of it on Instagram or something, and it really looked like the bleeding wounds of Christ.
I don't know if this happens to you, but I had there's so many things lined up for the next couple of weeks that I had to record, and I owed to the team, and they
Yep.
always give me trouble for being late on this stuff. I had no time. I was like, I just have to record. I have to hit record. This is going to be the best lesson in humility.
Oh, that's
And
great.
it just goes up as it is. Here I am.
Well, Greg, tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do. You and I first met. When did you first come to a TOB Institute course?
Gosh, I think I was one of the first courses. It was
2004, 2005. You were a Franciscan friar of the renewal. You were discerning a call to priesthood.
Yeah, I think that was actually even my second course. I probably originally was maybe 5 or 6, and then I was a Franciscan friar in 2007. I think I was there then, but I came back to the faith in college, and my freshman year of college, I was at Boston College, and I had Peter Kraft, who introduced me to John Paul II, and
That'll do it.
also some of your tapes.
Wow.
And so that's what broke me open. That goes, right back to my beginning. And started to understand the human person. I had some wounds from my own parents' divorce that he made a lot of sense of with love and responsibility. And then I was just all in. So I went really deep into theology of the body, and then of course discovered your material. And then in that process also fell in love with the Franciscan spirituality. And I just wanted to go all in with my whole life. I discerned religious life. So I joined the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and I was there for almost 4 years. And
And you
so,
had a
yeah,
big, bushy, burly beard that I loved.
it was great. I love that beard. I keep pictures of it for my kids now. I show them the beard that I used to have. So
Oh,
they're
that's great.
divided. Some of them want me to grow it back, and some of them tell me to shave every day. So,
Right.
but so I ended up discerning a vocation in marriage before I made final vows and left the friars. Went to get a doctorate in psychology. So if you're married, you got to make money, you got to support the family. So I figured that was a job that made the most sense for me at that point. And yeah, so then I started the Catholic Psych Institute as a psychologist in 2012, and I've always seen the work of John Paul II and our faith as really central to whatever the work is that I'm doing as a psychologist. And psychology is sort of a practical manifestation of walking with people, but my heart is really in just sort of what it means to accompany as Christ met us and accompanies us. How can we offer that to others as well? And so that's what I've been obsessed with since the beginning, and just bringing together a lot of these ideas of integration, of being fully human, of really entering into the experience of others. That's what drives a lot of the work that we do at the Catholic Psych Institute.
I want to hear a lot more about Catholic Psych Institute, and we're going to talk about a book that you're working on the teaching of John Paul II and how it impacts your work in psychology. But before we get there, I like to ask my guests a few questions just to get us in a zone or a mode of sacramentality, how we encounter God and his creation. So here's a few questions, Greg, that I like to ask my guests. Number one, tell our viewers a favorite place of yours in God's creation where you experience sacramentality, where God's creation speaks to you, makes you sing, brings you alive. Is it a Is it a park? Is it a favorite vacation spot? Is it a memory from your childhood? Anything's fair game here.
It's a rock jetty in Westerly, Rhode
Ooh,
Island.
yeah.
It's right at the Dunes Beach, and there's a little fishing parking area. You could walk out to the end of this rock jetty, and it's just one of these picture perfect spots where, I mean, it is memories of childhood that makes it perfect for me. But really nice dunes and really beautiful ocean, and the rock jetty takes you out there, so you can really sort of be standing on the end and sort of in the middle of, feel like you're in the middle of the ocean if you turn the right direction, and that's where, where things come together, sort of the infinite sort of playing out there on the cusp of where your feet are literally touching. So
So
that's
tell
probably
me,
a space I can go back to, that space anytime, no matter what I'm going through.
so
And it's
this
just,
sounds like a place from your childhood that you still get to go to?
yeah, in Rhode Island, we grew up going there in the summers. I grew up in Connecticut, lived in Connecticut, was raised there, but in the summertime we would go to Rhode Island, so it was kind of a childhood summer place. And I worked there for the summers. I would go back there in high school, and then even during college, I would take road trips just to kind of revisit that spot. And so, my dad lives close by there now, and I get to take my kids there. So it's
Oh,
really a
that's
nice
awesome.
recurring spot for me. Yeah.
Speaking of Peter Kraft, he talks about how where the ocean meets the shore, and he even uses the image of rocks, where the waves are crashing against the rocks. He says this is kind of an image of the masculine and the feminine coming together. That there's nothing
Mm.
more masculine than the symbol of a rock, and nothing more feminine in creation than the symbol of the sea. And where the rocks and the sea come together, you have this sacramental moment.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and so you're sharing that makes me think of that beautiful insight of Peter Kraft. And he also says this is a great insight. It's like duh, but where's the most expensive real estate on the planet?
Oh
It's
yeah. That's a
it's
great point.
waterfront, right?
That's
Waterfront.
right.
Why do we want to be? Why do we want to be where the land and the sea meet? There's
Oh yeah.
some beautiful symbol there. There's some beautiful harmony there. It's this marriage of differences, and we see it written right into creation. That whole beautiful masculinity, femininity. That's an awesome. Tell us. Do you have a specific memory? You gave us the general spot, but do you have a specific memory of being on that rock jetty where you thought, I don't know, but I think maybe heaven is speaking to my heart?
Oh gosh, I have a few, but there was one particular time that it was in the middle of a storm that was coming.
Mm.
And I wasn't in the middle of the storm, but the timing was that. And I was watching these thunder clouds coming off from a far distance and lightning coming down to the ocean from a distance. And it was so magical, surreal. It was like I was in another world. And so just experiencing everything that's on a normal basis and then adding to it just this sort of supernatural electric energy and this beautiful vista of lightning coming down, the darkness and the light, the clouds rolling in together, the wind picking up, is like a little bit dangerous,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
exhilarating,
Love
and
it.
it was just magical.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, maybe people don't know it, but these are theophanies. These are encounters with the divine where creation is singing to our hearts. And another place in my life of particular encounter, theophany, experience of the divine is movies and music. So, two more questions. I want to hear your favorite. Give us the top three favorite movies of all time, and then we're going to talk music. Top three favorite
Oh god.
movies.
All right, top three. I have to say, I was actually just praying with this a couple days ago, and I was thinking about how you introduced me to the depths of beauty of Les Mis.
Mm.
And we can get into this more, but I've been working on a presentation about AI, and there's a couple of things involved there, but Les Mis is specifically one that comes to mind. One is, I'd be remiss, and my kids will make fun of me if I don't tell you with vulnerability that the movie that will get me to choke up every single time is Moana.
Oh, yeah, it's an awesome
So,
movie.
so they love to. They don't necessarily even like it as much as I do, but they love to watch me watch it because it'll definitely get things moving for me. And then, gosh, there's so many. I love so many movies. To pick three, I have to say, I've been deep diving into Star Wars. I can't necessarily say that I have one particular one that's my favorite, but the storyline right there is I've been immersed in. So I'm gonna name that one.
I was almost 8 years old when Star Wars came out in 1977. And I was the perfect age to just have that absolutely capture my imagination. I'll never forget sitting in the dark theater and hearing that score for the first time, the opening scene, that trumpet, that ba ba da da ba da ba 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 ba. I'm sitting in my seat, as a little kid, and my world is getting absolutely rocked. And I had no idea till decades later that this was a sacred moment for me. Like, this was an encounter with a story that captured my mind, captured my heart, captured my imagination, and that in a very real, beautiful way, heaven was wooing my heart, opening me to adventure, opening me to story. It's so important that we not dismiss the stories that speak to our hearts, the art that speaks to our heart. Art is the expression of the heart. And I love this from Pope Benedict XVI. He says, a theologian who does not love nature, music, poetry, art can be dangerous. And why does he say that? He says it because appreciation of nature, beauty, music, art, story, it reveals that we are in touch with what's going on in our hearts. And if theology is just kept in the head, or if your study of psychology is just kept in the head, and you're not on that journey from head to heart, you can be dangerous, right? You end up a Pharisee. You end up having lots of knowledge in your head, and it might be good knowledge, it might be right knowledge, it might be truthful knowledge, but if we don't integrate that with what we're living from the heart, we are in trouble, and we can be very dangerous. So, along the same lines, we've talked about your love of nature, your love of movies. Now we want to move to music, but it looks like you wanted to say something before we did that, so go ahead.
Well, I can't help myself. We were just talking about this. I have a question. What do you think about? We were kind of noticing with the improvement in filmmaking and cinematography and the film equipment and all these things, the TV shows, like because we're talking about Andor specifically with the Star Wars storyline, and something is getting lost in the theater experience. And what you just described as an 8-year-old, kids are not getting that kind of experience with that kind of magic happening in that moment of being taken out of oneself. Yeah. And so we're just kind of thinking about this through, like, what does this mean? Now we have these TV shows that you can binge that are as well produced as movies are today.
Right.
We're kind of losing a theater experience. Maybe there's still a place for that, but I don't know if that's interesting to think or talk about.
It is interesting to me. I have been reflecting on this lately as well, that there is a sacred experience in being in a communal environment with people you don't even know, but it's dark and then the screen lights up, right? It's almost like the ancient, very human experience of gathering around a fire in the dark, where your faces are lit up only by the flicker of the flame, and
interesting.
And the elders telling the stories.
Yes.
And that's how the young people in a culture, in a tribe, their imaginations would start to grow and expand, sitting around the fire in the dark, faces silhouetted by the flame. And the modern equivalent of that was the movie theater experience. I mean, for me, growing up in the 70s and 80s, this could be a sacred experience, right?
Yeah.
And when VCRs came in the early 80s, I mean, I was blown away that I could actually watch a movie on my TV whenever I wanted. I just had to go down to the video store and rent it and put it in my VCR. There was a certain novelty to that, but it was also, I can remember the experience of a kind of absence of something I really liked about the sacredness of being in a dark space, lit up by the screen, lit up by flickering light, and being together, even with strangers, to receive a story. There's something sacred about that. There's something, dare I say, even quasi-liturgical about that, where we gather around and we're all oriented towards the same story and we're open to receiving it. I think we're losing something that is a kind of cultural glue. It certainly was in my day and age. A cultural glue for people was the movie theater experience. And here we are with our little individualized home theaters now, where we watch everything on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. And yes, something is lost. The communal experience is lost. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's the quality is such that it doesn't even make it. It's not even better to go to the theater anywhere necessarily.
That's right.
It's now it's they're improving the delivery and making it easier and better, quote unquote, to stay in your own home on your own computer. And at least before, if it was a VHS, it was like a worse quality, bad version of what you would otherwise see in the theater.
Yes,
and
that's
so
right.
it's still you're still drawn out towards that as the penultimate movie experience. And now they're sort of inverting it, and you get a better experience at home in some ways. So it seems like a lot's being lost there.
No, I agree. We need a cultural glue, and art is often that cultural glue. And as as surfacey as it might sound, I remember even the bond that was created when we were kids and everybody was watching the same TV shows the night before because they only came on at 8:00 on Monday night or Thursday night. And then the next day on the bus on the way to school, everybody was talking about what was on TV the night before. And it became a glue. It became a bond. It became a cultural experience that many, many people were having together. And I'll say the same thing about music. Like when I was a kid, it was always Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown that everybody was listening to on Saturday mornings. And then Monday morning, we're all talking about the top songs of the week. And everybody's listening to the same stuff on the radio. And that can create, if I were to criticize it, it creates a kind of cultural monopoly or something, or monotonousness. Is that a word? Monotonousness? I don't know. But it created a bond where we're gathered around art together and we're experiencing it together. And today, the entertainment world, the world of art, whether it's music or movies, is so scattered. Everybody has their little niche. And popular music, there's popular music. My kids talk about the popular music today. But it's not that everybody's gathered around listening to the same stuff in the same way it was when I grew up. I would say something is lost.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So tell me about music. I want to pick your mind, pick your heart, if I can say that. What's your favorite music? What music is lighting a fire in your world today?
I really now gravitate much more towards instrumental music and different kinds of expressions. I love jazz. And so, any kind of sort of classic jazz or just sort of traditional jazz, I love. I love John Coltrane, Wynton Marsalis.
Nice.
We'll go down to Kennedy Center and see Wynton Marsalis. Whenever he pops up, we'll find him different places. Going back to sort of high school and memories of childhood, I used to love Dave Matthews.
Yeah.
And it was kind of before he became, sold out popular, as people will say. But I just love even just the instrumental dimension of the jam band type music. And, there's that high school time when I alluded to earlier, when my parents are going through a hard time and they ended up getting divorced, but I felt so isolated, and I found so much connection and meaning in what some of those lyrics, but then more so what I later read in John Paul II was just this artistic expression of community through improvisation and the way that the different voices of instruments come together and be a part of something, that they create something bigger than themselves. So I was lost for hours. I'd get lost and know every little nuance, every little note that was different or unique from a different show. And I had like 40 cassette tapes of all different shows that, people would trade the Dave Matthews concert tapes. So that was the beginning of this love for the instrumental music. And now we recently went to see Bella Fleck. He's an
Nice.
amazing banjo musician. And what's some of the other ones? Chick Corea. We used to go see him. But yeah, a lot of that sort of a little bit. Sometimes it's out there. Some of the music gets a little bit liminal, but a lot of that sort of artistic expression.
Tell me if you've ever heard this quote from Benedict XVI. It's one of my favorites. He says, "Music uncovers the buried way to the heart. And wherever this happens, he says, it becomes the road that leads to Jesus."
Oof.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Isn't that good? Music.
That's awesome.
Music uncovers the buried way to the heart. Let's just pause on that for a minute. It's such an accurate description of what I experience with music. Like there are places in my heart that have been buried by, I don't know, you just bury stuff because it's painful. You don't want to look at it. It's difficult to look at. And it gets buried in there, or just time buries it. And then you hear a song. I heard just recently, some of my colleagues here at the TOB Institute, we do these monthly music nights where we gather at somebody's home and we all pick out songs that we want to share with everybody, and we share why it's meaningful. And sometimes we'll do a theme, like we'll do a round of, okay, it's got to be from 1978, or it's got to be, pick a year, or we'll pick an artist. And somebody at a recent music night picked a Neil Diamond round. So we all had to play some Neil Diamond song. And here we're in a room full of men who were like, if you're Neil Diamond is not like an artist that men would necessarily be proud that they like, but we had to like bear our secret affection for a certain Neil Diamond song.
Well, America, when that starts playing, man, I don't know, you're hard pressed to not get real excited.
Yeah, come on. Thank you. Because somebody put that song on. We're coming to America today.
Oh, man.
And immediately that song, it uncovers a buried place in my heart. Like immediately, I'm in my childhood bedroom in the early 1980s, and I know my older brother would make fun of me if I admitted that I liked that song, America by Neil Diamond. But when it came on, I secretly my heart would swell.
That's awesome.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. And, if I have a patriotic bone in my body, which I if I do, it's buried. But that Neil Diamond song will bring it out. It uncovers the buried way to the heart. What a beautiful description of the power of music. And then he adds, wherever this happens. And I love that he says, wherever this happens. It could be Neil Diamond. It could be the Dave Matthews Band, where your heart, some buried place in your heart is getting uncovered. And in the very uncovering of your heart, whether we realize it or not, it becomes an encounter with Jesus, because that's where we find him. We find him in the depths of our heart. We find him in those buried places of our heart. So I love that this is resonating with you, that quote from Benedict. Tell me how it's hitting.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's bringing up in my mind, I wonder, I don't know if this is getting off track, but
Nothing
I
is
do
getting off
also.
track here. This
Okay,
conversation
good.
can go anywhere.
But I often think about, and I really try to stay away from this. Like, I don't fall down this rabbit hole very much at all, but I do especially when it comes to music. And I think about a lot of the rock and roll musicians and the demonic stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think about this, like what power there is to hijack
Yes,
the heart's resonance with music.
yes,
And, some of these songs are like, it's like they're so catchy, they're so addictive. I mean, I put on it came on the radio, Crazy Train,
yeah.
and like my
That
kids
riff, that riff in
can't get
Crazy
enough of
Train.
it.
Yeah.
It's like it's awesome. And then you're
Yeah,
like
and
listening to it,
then
but
you
then
listen to the lyric, you're like, oh
you're like,
crap.
uh-oh.
Yep.
And then I'm so torn. I'm like, do I turn it off? Do I keep it on? Do I turn it off? Do I keep it on? But then it's like, man, how does that happen? Like, there's got to be something supernatural happening here where, or something
Yes.
where some of these musicians, let their talents get hijacked, but then, they're nurturing like something in the wrong direction here, or using it at least for the wrong reason.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
is that even going to be uncovered and bring us to an encounter of Jesus? Maybe just in the
Yes.
inverse, or how does that work?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for bringing that up, because it's so important. We have to be very discerning here. In my love of music, when I came to my faith in my early 20s, like I had to go through my record collection and throw a lot of it out. It was because it just conjured up really painful memories, and it was unsavory lyrics and unsavory bands and what they stood for and promoted. And yeah, I went through a purge because I needed space from it, because it just was part of a really debauched kind of existence that I was living at the time. I was in a lot of rock and roll bands myself and saw that whole scene. And it is a battleground. Music, because it has such power to speak to the depths of our souls, there is no doubt that music is a battleground between good and evil. And just as Holy Spirits want to stir our hearts through music, so do unholy spirits want to stir our hearts through music in the wrong direction. And something that good spiritual direction has helped me to understand, and I've been with the same beautiful Catholic priest here in Pennsylvania for the last 21 years, and he has helped me to understand how God sends his son, Jesus Christ, to redeem everything. And this means Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne can be redeemed by Jesus Christ. It absolutely can be. And the fundamental principle here of Catholic cosmology that is absolutely essential for this conversation, you've heard me say it before, it's this: the devil doesn't have his own clay. Right? All the devil can do is take God's clay, and God looked at everything he made and said, behold, it's very good. Right? The enemy gets his hands on God's good clay and twists it up. So that song, Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, is twisted clay, right? And it's understandable at a certain stage of our journey where we haven't grown in maturity that we would need to throw away that twisted clay. Okay, that twisted clay is just going to get me in trouble. I need to throw it away, right? So at the early stage of my Christian journey, I had to throw away a lot of my old records. Well, guess what? All these years later, I'm sad that I threw away some of those records, because as I've grown, I've learned how I can bring Jesus right into that twisted clay and let him untwist it. Let him undo what the enemy has done, because there's always good clay in there that got twisted up. And that's a development that comes with Christian maturity. That comes with really discerning the inner movements of our own hearts. But that's exactly what we're called to in the Christian life, learning to discern the inner movements of our hearts. And yeah, that riff in Crazy Train, there's no doubt that the enemy has used that to lead many, many, many people astray. Right? But here's the analogy. It's like pornography. Right? Pornography is a hellish twisting of a heavenly reality. Right? And if we think the solution to pornography is to write off the human body altogether and say that's just the devil's territory, give it to the devil. Yeah. No, well, the devil wins. The devil wins if we surrender that clay to him. No. We got to take that clay back and let the Holy Spirit come in there and untwist what sin has twisted up. And then the very same riff that the enemy used from Crazy Train to lead you away can become something that leads you to the Lord. And this, I believe, is what Benedict is getting at when he says, wherever this happens, wherever music uncovers the buried way to the heart, it becomes a road that leads us to Jesus. I'll give you one example. This is amazing. Like AC/DC, Highway to Hell. I'm on the highway to hell. Well, I know a priest who loved AC/DC in his teenage years before he was a practicing Catholic. And he's now a priest. He's now a Catholic priest. And it was Holy Saturday, and he was in prayer, praying about Christ's descent into hell. And guess what song got redeemed? And became his Holy Saturday meditation, right? Highway to Hell got redeemed.
Yeah, that's
on
awesome.
Holy Saturday for this priest. The lyrics became for him a meditation on Christ's willing, rapid descent on the highway to hell in order to save hell, in order to redeem it all. I mean, that's just one example. I could give countless examples from my own life of how twisted lyrics or twisted music gets untwisted.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing. And the Holy Spirit gets in there and can do all sorts of things with that.
Absolutely, he can. So you must have very practical application of exactly what we're talking about here in your work as a psychologist in terms of helping people untwist twisted clay in their lives. I mean, isn't that basically a summary of your profession? Isn't this what you're trying to do?
Yeah, actually, exactly right. And it's funny, even while we're talking, I've been thinking about how even the songs, you know, there's this model of therapy right now that's really popular called internal family systems. And we talk about how we all have these different parts, and parts of us that feel a certain way or affected by a certain thing or emerged at a certain time in our life. And instead of having this sort of uncompassionate rejection disposition towards these different things that are inside of us, part of the healing process is learning how to take mercy and compassion to all the parts that are inside of us. But even while we're talking, I'm thinking like some of these songs could be the soundtrack for some of these parts.
Yes.
And it makes really good sense of how these parts of us feel at different times in our life. And it's not the fact that it's feeling a certain way or that a certain thing happened. It's what is the sort of overall disposition towards it. And even by blessing the existence of that song or that part of the soundtrack or that experience, it's almost like that's the all-encompassing mercy and compassion that God wants to give us, that he models for us, that we should have for ourselves. And even allowing for that to exist within us is already that first step of compassion, because it says you're worth listening to. Your experience is worth hearing. And I'm not going to reject you straight out just because, you know, the cover of the CD had, an upside down cross on it or whatever. It's like, well, let's go deeper. Let's listen to the music. Let's understand what was happening there and what this meant for you and how we can actually restore hope and goodness to where you're at.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You must be familiar with a book I read just a couple months ago by Dr. Jerry Crete, The Litanies of the Heart.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Oh, you endorsed it. You had a big, didn't you endorse that one?
Yeah, I read that while he was putting that together, and it's exactly the system he's talking about. He's an expert in internal family systems and a Catholic approach, especially to how to really take that and bring it into the faith in a very deep way.
Can you say more about what internal family systems is, Because I remember when I was first hearing that phrase, I don't know, a couple years ago, I started applying something in my own mind. I kind of made up, oh, that must mean such and such. And then when I found out what it actually means, it was very illuminating. Like it's like we have, I mean, you can speak to it much better than I, but within us, we have like different family members in our own humanity that need to be acknowledged, and they need to learn how to love one another and get along. And so we speak of an internal family system. So, but
Exactly.
say more to our audience about what that means and how it can help us to come to a more peaceful existence in our own lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's helpful to understand that even our sense of self, our construct, or our idea that we have about what it means to have a self or be a self, is kind of a relatively new construct, and it comes from psychology. So we have like Freudian theories, and like if you go back 300, 400, 500 years ago, or you go to St. Paul and the way he talks about the flesh of the spirit, these are all ideas that build up over time. So the last 100 years, we've been sold on this idea that we have like one way of being, and everything else is really not ourself. And this is where I think about the Danny DeVito commercial where he needs a Snickers bar. If you're feeling hangry, all you need is a Snickers bar, and then you're not Danny DeVito anymore, right? It's like, well, no, that the idea is actually the hangry part of us is still us. And if you say, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today or whatever, it's like, well, you are still acting yourself, even though maybe this is a different form or version of where you're at. So that's sort of the first step, is to realize maybe there's a different way to think about ourselves. Then in psychology, we used to diagnose something called multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity. And it's like, well, we can have this experience with so much trauma that we almost become crystallized into different personalities. And I've had patients like this. One day they come in the office and they look a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way. They have a certain name. And then the next week they come and it's like an entirely different person came into your office. Different gait, different tone of voice, different facial, even like the muscles in your face can change. You look different.
Yep.
Well, long story short is that this one particular theorist started to realize that we all have a little bit of that in us. We can all have these different manners of being.
Like
and if we go even
Hyde
deeper,
kind of thing.
What's that?
Like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde. And actually there's like a lot of different kinds. Maybe we have part of us that feels really social and gregarious, and we love to be the center of attention. Another part of us maybe wants to hide, would rather stay in bed, doesn't want to go to the party.
Yep.
And again, we're tempted to say like, well, I'm an extrovert, so that means, oh, this is who I really am. And we don't give ourselves the freedom to say, well, maybe sometimes I don't want to go to the party if I don't think that's who I really, quote unquote, really am. Well, we do have all these different parts inside of us. And if we're honest, we can acknowledge some of them we don't like very much. And it's nicer to think like, that's not really me. This perfect version of myself that I'm looking at how to act, and maybe it's a holy card version of myself, or it's the quote unquote way I'm supposed to be, that becomes who I think I really am. And all these other versions of myself, I just reject. Well, at the end of the day, it's called internal family systems. Like you said, it's like this family inside. And if you're doing family therapy, so like thinking about an actual family with different members of the family, you bring everybody into the room and you say, all right, we got to get down to the bottom of the problem here. And then they start saying who the problem is or what the problem is. And, maybe, Uncle Frank drinks too much, and, now there's a conflict between mom and dad, and, Susie, the teenager is the problem. She's staying out too late, whatever. And all this fighting happens. Then you get to the end of the conversation and you realize like, well, everybody actually thinks that Uncle Frank is the problem. Well, kicking Uncle Frank out of the family is never the solution.
Right.
But and if we approach Uncle Frank instead and say, okay, the drinking is causing all these problems, but like, what's going on for you? And you find out Uncle Frank is a war vet. He's got all this trauma. He needs help. Like, he's got a story too. And you realize, okay, with compassion and mercy, we can start to heal the family system, not by kicking people out, but by bringing people in, by showing more compassion and mercy. Well, that same disposition we can then bring to all the parts that are all the members of our internal family. The loudmouth part, the prideful part, the sensual part, the scared part, the imposter syndrome part, all those different parts, we can have a different disposition towards them.
Can I tell you a story of what happened to me when I was reading Jerry Creet's book on internal family systems? And I'd love, I don't know, maybe we could do like a little kind of session here where you're helping me walk through this just for the sake of our viewers so that they can see kind of how this works. So,
Sure thing.
So he had in the book, he had the reader find a place that you wanted to be, like all of the parts within you were happy to go to this place. And I picked in my mind like a cottage by a lake, like a beautiful lake house kind of thing, a cottage with, I've always loved cabins and cottages, and I picked that spot, and there was a big fireplace in this big living room. And I don't know if you've ever seen On Golden Pond, the movie, but it was kind of a cottage like that.
Okay.
Anyway, so, and he said, picture yourself in this place that you want to be, and then bring all the different parts that you're aware of in your internal family system and bring them all together in that place. And I was just trying to enter into that exercise and place myself in that happy spot on that lake cottage, the cottage on the lake. And what started showing up for me as I was just trying to be attentive to different parts of me from my life experience, this was a very interesting into my soul. All of the different Halloween costumes I wore as a kid started showing up. Like my 4-year-old self when I was Batman was the first one to show up. And then my 6-year-old self when I was Planet of the Apes. And then my 8-year-old self, I can't remember all the costumes I wore as a kid for Halloween, but I remember I was Darth Vader in when I was 8 years old. And then I was Rocky Balboa. And then I got I was a pirate in there somewhere. And then when I was a little older, I was a punk rocker. This was the early 80s. It was like my last time I went trick-or-treating, I dressed up as a punk rocker. And all of these different characters showed up in this room. And then he invited us to bring Jesus into it. And I was allowing, there are parts of me that I've rejected. I don't like my Planet of the Apes costume because people made fun of me because I wanted to get the actual Planet of the Apes costume from the store, but my mom wouldn't buy it. So she made a homemade one that looked really stupid. In my opinion, I just wanted to have the plastic mask, but she made a homemade mask to try to make me look like Planet of the Apes. And I was embarrassed by it. And I just reject that part of myself that was a little kid that cried when people laughed at me. I don't even want to deal with that. And Jesus shows up in the room and he wants to go right over to this little kid and tell him that he's loved right there in his pain. And then Jesus wants to teach me, grown up Christopher, how to love that little rejected kid that I've rejected. Walk me, if I were in a counseling session with you and I said, well, Dr. Bottaro, this is what happened to me when you gave me that exercise. How would you walk me through that? What would you say to me?
Yeah, first of all, it's such a beautiful sort of layout, seeing all these different manifestations of your psyche and creativity and your imagination coming out.
And I'm telling you, I feel really vulnerable right now. I know this is going to be on YouTube, and I'm like, shit. I just made myself really naked. Those Halloween costumes represent aspects of me that I'm not sure I want on display to everybody. But I'm doing this for the sake of hopefully a greater good for the viewers who are watching. But I just wanted to say that I really feel vulnerable in that place, and I imagine it's pretty normal.
It is very normal, and we could talk more about this too. This is what John Paul II opened up, which is just so amazing. Not enough people talk about his contributions to psychology. In Person and Act, he talks about the subconscious, and he lays out a whole framework for understanding the subconscious. And there are protective mechanisms that are blocking our conscious mind from like bringing these things up on a regular
Yes,
basis.
yes, yes.
So there's this inner dynamism that pushes these images down until you take that very human step of taking action and really consciously, intentionally calling them to mind in a sort of self-determined kind of way, which is, what you're courageously doing right here. And so you bring these things up. It's like your psyche created these images. It made sense of something it's feeling that it can't necessarily articulate immediately or in a realm of conscious thought, but then it pulls out these images. It's like, oh, you remember being the Planet of the Apes character or any of these other characters. So you're connecting meaning and associations to things from your history, from your memory, with what comes up in your subconscious. So what we would look at is, that part of you that you're rejecting, if it causes you some kind of threat, it's like being that vulnerable is painful. So
Yes.
obviously we don't want to experience pain. And there's going to be ways that our psyche tries to block us from pain. That's a very healthy, normal thing that God created our psyche to do.
Right.
But if we want to be free from that tension that gets created in the system of doing all this blocking, we go now as adults into the world where as a child you didn't have this capacity.
Right.
But now you have it because you have an adult, mature spirituality, a relationship with God, that you can now come into that space. And maybe another adult could have done it for you then, but here you are now. And you can say, well, first of all, what is this experience actually trying to communicate to you? Like, why do you feel rejection? Like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
that actually communicating to you? What does this little boy really want? What does he really need? And we can go there if you want right now, but you can sort of look at him and say,
Well,
like,
let's
what are you
try it.
really
Let's try
longing
it.
for?
Yeah, let's go over there right now. And a scripture is coming to my mind right now also. And I loved how Peter Crete in his book, he always links these principles of internal family systems with certain scripture verses and encourages that. And the scripture verse that is like ringing in my ear right now is, "Let the little children come to me."
Yes,
So
exactly.
there's a part of me that has rejected that kid in the Planet of the Apes costume,
Yes.
right? And
And that's another part too, which we could get into the whole system that we'd call a protector part or a manager. But you now, in what we would call self, if you can close your eyes and you can see that little boy
yep,
and you can feel his feelings with him, you know how he
yep,
feels,
yep,
and you can look at him with validation of understanding and just say, help me understand how you feel right now. What are you longing for? What are you hurt by? What are you looking for?
yeah. Well, he's looking for acceptance. He's looking for love. He's looking to be part of the group. And I felt ostracized and rejected because I didn't have the right costume, because my mom didn't want to pay whatever it would have cost, probably 75 cents in 1975, for me to have that costume.
So you as a man, as a son of God with a relationship with God, as a dad, if you're looking at this little boy and you're seeing him feeling those feelings, what do you want to say to him?
I love you. I want to give him a hug. I want to kiss him on the head. And even as I say that, like, it becomes very visceral. Like I can smell his hair as I'm
Mm.
leaning over to kiss his head. It's a very visceral image to me.
How's he reacting?
Yeah, he's looking up at me. Like, I see a tear in his eye, but I see a glimmer of gratitude to me for meeting him right there and comforting him right there. Yeah, there's a there's also I sense a need for reconciliation, like in my adult self that has rejected that little kid. There's a need for him to forgive me for rejecting him. Like I have also rejected him. Maybe that's a different part of me, but there's an adult part of me. There's an adult part of me that wants to show him comfort and wants to just hug him up and love on him. But there's an adult part of me also that doesn't want to identify with that pain, and so I've rejected him. And it almost feels
What
like
does that part look like? Can you picture that part, the rejecting part?
The rejecting part, it's the part of me that wants to be cool. It's the part of me that wants to impress other people. It's the part of me that wants to bury the pain. And
what does that part look like?
At it.
What, is he wearing a costume, or does he have a shape, or what does he look like? He's adult, you said.
Well, now that you say it, like I'm trying to look at him, and he's he's wearing like a big monkey suit, which is interesting because we're talking about Planet of the Apes. But it's a way of hiding, and I think the monkey suit kind of represents a refusal to be exposed. Like let me just hide behind all this fur. Like that's the emphasis of the monkey suit, is this lots of fur. And the fur is like a hiding. Like I was afraid, I was naked, so I hid myself behind this monkey fur. All right, now I'm getting really vulnerable.
That's okay. We could.
I don't mind if there's a point to this. If there's a point to this. But
this is what we do.
This is what you do.
This is what we do for many sessions, hours. You could do this for the rest of your life, really. I mean, there's.
But I don't think most people have their sessions on YouTube.
No, probably not. It's funny. I watched a session when I was first learning about this. Tim Ferriss interviewed the founder of this system. His name is Richard Schwartz.
Right.
And Tim kind of asked the same thing. He was like, well, could you do this on me right now? And then he very quickly got very deep. And I think he kind of had the same experience of like, wait a minute, where are we going?
Whoa, where are we going? No, but like, can you bring this together for me and for our viewers, like in a way that might help our viewers to realize the practical application of this in their own lives? Like what I've shared with you, and obviously we could go much, much deeper, but that would probably be better for a private session. But what's the takeaway here when we start to discover these parts? And I'm reminded also here, and this kind of brings us full circle with our conversation about music. Like what brings me to these memories is so often music, right? Music uncovers the buried way to the heart. If somebody's listening to a song, they're driving in their car, and all of a sudden on the radio comes a song from their childhood, and they're zoomed back, and they all of a sudden find a tear coming down their cheek because it takes them back to some confusing time in their life. What can they take away here from my going there with the whole Planet of the Apes thing and the Halloween costumes?
Yeah. I feel like the core takeaway here, it comes back to the being made in the image of God and having the dignity of being a child of God. And then the way that connects is because every single part that comes up is going to be good. It's going to be understandable. It's going to have a reason. And a lot of people, when they start this work, and I'm not saying that you necessarily were saying this, but someone might have the sense of like, all right, well, I rejected that little boy part of myself. And that almost implies a sin, a bad thing, and then you even said like, well, there needs to be a reconciliation that happens. And of course, 100% true. Between the parts, there's a lot of fighting sometimes, just like within a family.
Right.
But what we need to go deeper in is understanding even the rejecting part had a reason for doing the rejecting. It's understandable. It's lovable. We can get to a place where now that part is in view. That's the new maybe child or the new sort of patient. That's the new recipient of love. And that's the one wearing the monkey suit, wearing the fur. And now let's love that part too. And it's like, we'll never stop loving the parts of us because it's all us.
It's all
Like
us. It's all us.
this is
Right.
the whole beautiful thing about this system of understanding. It's like we reject parts of ourselves, even though we go to daily mass, we pray our rosaries, we're doing the Divine Mercy, we're doing the Sacred Heart. It's like, oh, everything is mercy, except we don't actually give it to
Oof.
every part of ourselves.
Wow.
And we're
Yeah.
blocking God's mercy from entering into some corners of our own hearts. And so just like you said with the music and just like with the pornography and the different distortions, at the core, it's all the clay that God started off with that is
Oh,
good. And every part of us can be untwisted and loved in the same way.
that's beautiful. I even as you say that, like you're I'm feeling liberated. Even my body language right now, I'm like relaxed and leaning back, and there's a hopefulness. It's beautiful.
Amen.
That's beautiful. And thank you also for what you just said a moment ago. You know, we say the rosary, we do the Divine Mercy, we have our devotion to the Sacred Heart, and we're doing the Catholic thing. We're checking the boxes, right?
Yeah.
But this is where, again, I'm coming back to something we said earlier. A theologian who doesn't love nature, beauty, music, art can be dangerous. And I would put it this way also. A Catholic who is just checking the boxes and isn't in touch with what's going on in the heart can be dangerous and is dangerous because it becomes Pharisaicalism. It becomes external religious practice without internal transformation. And that's dangerous.
The hidden suffering that I find in so many people I work with is that they're most dangerous to themselves first.
Yes.
It's like
Unpack that.
Pharisaical
I feel that as you say it.
It's against themselves. You know, it's like that we are our own worst enemies in so many ways. And that before somebody is expressing any of that judgment and Pharisaicism towards others,
we're doing it to ourselves.
And you could be assured, you could know for certain that when you observe that happening in somebody else, like when somebody else is doing that to others or to you, that they are 100 times worse of a judge to themselves. And this is where it could be so insidious. It's so difficult to see this happening because of all those check boxes, because we have all these superficial things that we know we're doing, but we're not letting mercy really go to the deepest, innermost recesses of our own heart. And then the little things that we judge in ourselves, we block out. It's like, no, God can't possibly love that part of me. That needs to be rejected. Well, that's your leper. That's your tax collector. That's the prostitute.
Your big hairy gorilla.
That's the big hairy gorilla.
That's the big hairy gorilla.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the big hairy gorilla. And isn't it interesting that what we're talking about is a little kid, 6 years old, in a Planet of the Apes suit, and then a grown-up dude in a big hairy gorilla suit. There's something going on there.
We could do another session. We could definitely go deeper.
Oh no, you shone a bright light for me there, Greg, in helping me realize that. Yes, see, there's a voice of condemnation in some part of me towards that part of me that rejected that other part of me.
Yes.
And there's like some kind of scolding going on. You shouldn't have rejected that part of you. Well, that's true. I shouldn't have, but I shouldn't be rejecting the part of me that rejected the other part of me.
Exactly.
I should be loving that. I should be compassionate towards that part of me that is rejecting that other part of me, because then otherwise it would be another part of me rejecting that part of me. And I need to love that part of me. And I need to, and go ahead.
No, you're on a roll. Keep going.
Okay. So where I get tripped up though, in that, I mean, how many parts do you have to go back to get to a place where there's an anchor? Because there's always going to be another part. But where I get a little hung up here is I mean, there is sin involved, right? It's not just everything's understandable and therefore everything's going to be okay because it's really understandable why you rejected that part of yourself, and just be compassionate. But there's sin in me. Like there's something in me that needs to be reconciled to God in my sinfulness, and not just patted on the back and told it's all going to be okay, and all of your mistakes and sins are understandable because of X, Y, and Z. But there needs to be real forgiveness and reconciliation in that mix somewhere too. And sometimes I get lost, and that the part of me that wants to hold somebody to task is also a part of me that is saying, hey, sin is real. Not that forgiveness is not real, but you can't just write all your sin off by saying it's understandable that you did that because you were hurt or wounded. You know what I'm getting at there?
This is super complex. There's a couple things I want to say. First of all, part of this is like part of this is an experience of the transcendent, and so I feel like you kind of touched it a couple minutes ago when you just kind of sat back and you put your hands behind your head and you felt freedom.
Yeah.
Because it's like at some point you realize, like, oh, I judge myself for being judgmental. Now I'm judging myself for judging myself for being judgmental. Now I'm judging. And all of a sudden you're like, what could possibly be the answer? And then all of a sudden it just breaks open and you just see the light, and it's like, I'm just loved. Like, you just have to just let it go.
Right. Oh, there it is. There's my posture again. Like that's what
it's like,
yes.
That's how simple it is.
Yeah, that's how simple it is.
And then you realize, like, well, it's not simple. It's actually incredibly difficult. But what's difficult is getting to the place where it's simple. And it's like, are you going to let yourself be a child? Are you going to let yourself be loved by the Father? Like, you don't have to figure it all out. You're not in charge. You're not in control. You're not responsible. And so you're responsible to make the act of the will to make yourself not responsible.
Oh, that's good.
And that's when you just let yourself be loved. So it's not this whole sort of like, pacifism and sort of pantheism or whatever else, where it's just like nothing really matters and nothing is real. But it's a radical, courageous choice to enter into the childhood of adoption in Christ and having God as our Father. And it's like, oh, he's actually the one who's making this okay. Sinfulness and all, like all my messiness.
And if we don't do that, guess what? We don't enter the kingdom, because unless you become like a child, you will not enter the kingdom.
Yes, it's so simple and it's so hard.
Yep.
So, yeah, of course we have to see the reality of sin, and we have to have reconciliation. And then, it's like, because every family needs structure. Like every kid needs discipline. Every kid needs to know what's right and wrong. But at the end of the day, it's being loved by the parents that makes it actually okay. It's not whether or not they did everything perfectly in the family.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
And that's where I think the older we get and the more mature we are, the more intelligent we are, it becomes a double-edged sword, because now we can wrap ourselves in even more complicated excuses of maintaining control.
Yeah, control is brutal. This is where I am in my interior journey of late, and my spiritual director has been helping me quite a bit to recognize that a deep neurosis in my life is this need to be in control.
I feel that.
Yeah. And learning how to let go of that. I'll give you one more example from the internal family systems approach that I really benefited from Jerry Creet's book. We have a family wedding this weekend. My oldest son is getting married. This will be number 3 of our three of our children now will be married off. Crazy. I can't even believe how fast life goes. And of course, as the parents of the groom, we were in charge of the rehearsal dinner, which is tomorrow on this filming. And I was already getting anxious about this 6 months ago. And my wife could see it happening in me. And she was pleading with me as only a wife knows how to do, in knowing all of my weaknesses, none of which I can ever hide from my wife, despite my best efforts. She knows that this is very interesting. And again, I'm making myself quite vulnerable here. And my purpose here is not to draw any attention to me, nor to go in the direction of TMI, but I'm hoping that in just sharing something from my own life here, it will prime other people's pumps, to help them reflect on their own inner life and the very complex dynamics of all of these different parts at work in our interior life. So my wife, 6 months ago, as she saw me kind of stressing about the rehearsal dinner already, she said, honey, you have such gifts to share, and I want our gifts to shine at this rehearsal dinner. I want our gifts to shine. And if you're stressed out about the money and the food that's going to be wasted, and that she went right in. She's going like right in with love and tenderness, but with a correct diagnosis of my problem. That I have this issue when food that I have bought gets wasted. When food that I have paid for gets thrown out, I get stressed.
I so feel that.
Money and food are like stressors in my life.
Yeah.
And she invited me, please, with great love and tenderness. She said 6 months ago, could you please just try to open these places in your heart to the Lord so that you're not a stress ball on the night of the rehearsal dinner.
Wow.
And I took that to heart, Greg. Like I want to offer this to my wife. Like she's worthy of this, right? I want to be this. I want to be a husband who's not stressing out at a family event because I paid the bill and lots of food is not getting eaten, and I'm stressing about the half drunken beer and the half eaten whatever that's the people are tossing away. Like those things, like even as I start to talk about it, I start to feel my muscles tensing up. So I'll just share, for the sake of helping our audience to know that there really is a path to look at this stuff in our hearts. I started taking this to spiritual direction. So I just went to, Father Jim is his name. And I said, Father Jim, here's what my wife asked of me. And I really, really want to be able to be free to bless my wife and be not a stress ball at the rehearsal dinner. And so he gave me a bunch of prayer exercises to walk through. And what started coming up as I went through these prayer exercises were memories of my childhood in which there was stress in my family. I won't get into all the details, but stress in my family about money and food. And my father's line of work was such that it was kind of feast or famine. There were seasons when money was flowing and he would take us to the country club. And then there were seasons where the money was not coming in. And I would just beg to get a 59-cent roast beef sandwich at the fast food place up the street from our house. And we couldn't do it. We don't have 2 pennies to rub together was the answer I was given. We can't go to the fast food store or restaurant because we don't have 2 pennies to rub together. And so there's this dynamic created in me, and as a little child, this, to use internal family system language, like a firefighter showed up, right? I have this manager firefighter that whenever money and food cause stress, the firefighter shows up to put out the fire. And what I realized as I'm taking all this to prayer was that I've set up this system of managing my stress, trying to put out a fire when there's no fire. Right? I'm like reliving patterns from my childhood.
Yeah.
Where I'm projecting into a situation a pattern of coping with stress from my childhood that no longer exists. And Wendy and I are not wealthy, but we have enough money to pay for this rehearsal dinner. And there's no need to stress about it.
Yeah.
There's no need to stress about it. And yet my firefighter wants to come in and make me think that there's a fire I need to put out. when there's no fire. And I remember saying to this firefighter who showed up in my heart one day, like, hey, dude, chillax. There's no fire. You can take off your firefighter hat. You can take off your firefighter jacket. You can put down your hose. There's look, there's no fire here. And that is no easy task, to convince the firefighter who spent his whole life and found his identity and value in my internal system in putting out fires. It's not easy for him to realize, oh, I know there's no fire here.
Right.
So help me. Am I working through what I'm supposed to work through here to
Yes,
deal with this?
it's praise God. Yes, that's awesome. 100%. And I would say the more compassion, the more you seek understanding of the firefighter's role, the more you approach the part of you that you discover within yourself that you are at first is so distasteful. It's distasteful to your wife. It's distasteful to you. It's distasteful to your kids.
Yeah.
It's like there's this pattern that you want to get rid of. Obviously, you've judged it to be something to get rid of. And it takes a lot of sort of mental strength to hold both the fact that we do want to get rid of this, and this kind of answers the question earlier, even if it's sinful. Okay, maybe we have to stop a particular behavior, but can we hold that reality at the same time going in with a sense of benefit of the doubt? Like, I don't know why you're here, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that it must be for a good reason. And then you find out that as a child, to feel those feelings and not know how to make sense of financial insecurity or not being given what you wanted, or the other kids got to go get the roast beef, or whatever these other elements are.
Right.
Like, that's everything to a little kid. That is a fire. Right. It's worse than a fire.
Yes, right. Oh, even as you say that, even as you say that, like there's a that little roast beef sandwich loving part of me in my childhood, that part of me that's still the child that wants that roast beef sandwich. I just felt validation coming from you as you said that. And man, I'm all the more aware that this is going to be on YouTube, and I feel like a little kid the class is going to laugh at me because I'm vulnerable.
No. This is so inspiring and courageous for people to see this.
It's scary. It's scary, shitsky. Pardon my Polish. It's to look at this stuff. It's not an easy thing to look at it. And maybe can you say another word about what these firefighters are? Like, you and I know that language because I've read the book and this is your whole life's work. But for our audience who doesn't know what we mean, even when we say a firefighter showed up, what does that mean?
Yeah, and at first I just want to say that it's scary and it's super vulnerable, because we all live with some part of us with this implicit assumption that we're supposed to be perfect because everybody looks perfect.
Yep.
But the reason why leading with vulnerability and leading even with weakness is so strong and so inspiring is because every person is in the same boat together. We are all a bunch of messes. Father Benedict used to say, all we need to do is to try and do our lousy best. That's how he said it. And I think about that all the time. I'm just trying to do my lousy best.
Yeah.
But okay, so if you have the courage to actually put it out there exactly, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm such a sinner, or I'm so weak, or I mess up all the time. It's like, okay, how?
Yeah.
It's like, what leader is willing to say it? It's like, no, this is what is actually feeling really vulnerable or broken inside of me. Praise God for that courage and vulnerability. And so we find out that this is how good God made us. It's so amazing that he gave us a psyche that can create constructs that keep us safe, even when we're little tiny kids.
Wow. That's good. Yeah.
Like, you're a little boy who's like scared about roast beef and where it's coming from, what his friends think of him and all stuff. It's like, but within that little boy is this ability to create new ways of operating within this foreign environment you've never been in before. Yeah. And all of a sudden you develop a sense of irritation at waste, or diversion, distraction. I'm going to
Yeah.
change the subject. Maybe
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people develop like they become like the class clown,
Right.
like
Right.
they get bullied, but how do they deal with that? Oh, now they're so funny and they
Yeah.
can like divert attention. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating and profound to watch that we have this capacity built into us from the
Amazing.
tiniest moments of childhood. And then to your point, that's exactly what happens is it just stays in place.
Yep.
So we build the pattern and then we keep using the pattern long after the situation is present, long after the fire has long been put out. And so all we have to do is actually go to the firefighter and instead of saying, "Hey, listen, you're a jerk, stop acting like that." It's like, no, that's not the right
Stop
answer.
spraying your hose on everything. No, there's no fire, you idiot.
It's instead, it's like, I am so impressed by you.
Wow. Wow.
I am so grateful for you. You came into my life. You helped me not die when I
Mm.
felt like I was going to die because of
Mm.
poverty or because of insecurity or because of,
Mm. Mm.
all these things. And you saved my life. Thank you.
Wow.
And then, the firefighter, instead of fighting to rip the hose out of his hand, the firefighter kind of puts the hose down just to listen because he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you see
Yeah.
me. Oh, great. Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally,
Yeah.
some appreciation around here." And it's like, now it's like, hey, you know what? I really appreciate that when we had a time where we didn't know where the money was coming from and the food was coming from. Do you want to look with me at what's happened in life since then? Because look at this, how beautiful life is.
Right.
Like
Right.
the
Right.
things that you were
Oh,
protecting me
wow.
from as a
Dang it.
child,
Dang
look
it.
at what God brought into our life now. We have this abundance. We have food on the table. We can give to our kids the way that we never had. And isn't this so amazing? And then here's another kicker. This is part of the IFS system. You can say to that firefighter, if you didn't have to put out that fire anymore, is there anything else you would like to do as a part of
Mm.
my system?
Mm.
That's a dimension of your personality. And
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
a dimension of your personality that is like aware of how much food costs. Well, that's great. Like
Right.
that's not a
Right.
bad thing.
Right.
Maybe you're a great budget manager. Maybe you're a great, maybe you just happen to have a good sense of what people like or don't like. Maybe you're just aware of which beer is getting wasted and you're just like, "Oh, we're not going to order that beer anymore." That's those are all dimensions of personality that came from a place that now you've healed and then you've repurposed. So it's like we don't need to have the anxiety anymore, like there's a fire we're putting out or protecting ourselves from. But thank God we developed that particular part of our personality that we have it available when needed and we can call
Oh,
upon it.
that's good. That's good. And that I can, even as you're saying that, what I'm seeing is within my own internal family system, I'm seeing all of these family members in here getting along.
Yes.
Like they learn to love each other. They learn to appreciate each other's gifts, and the bickering and the annoyances become fewer, and the peace that begins to reign more and more in the human heart as these different parts of us learn to love and appreciate and understand each other and show mercy towards each other. And then again, I just want to lean back and say, ah, yeah, you start to realize life is good. Life is good. I'm loved. I'm loved.
Yes. Amen. That's
So, Greg,
exactly it.
in bringing our conversation to a close, I was really struck before we came on the channel here. You were telling me about this book you're working on, which I think will be a beautiful way of bringing all that we've discussed. We've been so many places, and we said a prayer before this conversation that the Holy Spirit would make us sensitive to where we should go. And I could never have predicted that we would go to the places we went. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm also a little nervous about it, but that's okay. I'm putting it out there because I think I know the people who have blessed me the most. I know the people who have helped me the most. have been those who have been willing to take their masks off and be vulnerable. That's how we
Amen.
grow. That's how we learn. And there's certain boundaries that need to be respected, which is why at one point I said, maybe that's better for a private session. But I just want to say thank you for giving me an environment where your own heart, your own understanding created an atmosphere where I knew I could trust that to you, and you could shine a light on that for me.
Praise God.
Thank you, Greg. I really do mean that. A common ground we have in the work we do, with me as a theologian and with you as a psychologist, is our love for John Paul II.
Yes.
And particularly his personalistic approach to the way he taught the gospel. You are applying his personalism, and I want you to tell our viewers what that means. You are applying his personalism to your work as a psychologist. Tell our viewers what that means, what John Paul II's personalism is, and how you are applying it in your work. And then tell us about how this is all coming out in a forthcoming book.
Yes, thank you. So John Paul II's personalism describes his philosophy, the way he understood the human person, and he took a foundation and a Thomistic philosophical structure, traditional Catholic philosophy, but then he brought it into the 20th century and used the language of the day, which was phenomenology. And
tell our viewers what phenomenology is.
Yeah, so that's a philosophical framework where the question wasn't so much about how are things really, the way things really are, sort of out in the objective truth realm, but how is my experience of what we're talking about relate? What's the subjective meaning of something? So we could talk about, and this is what he did beautifully with Theology of the Body, obviously with, we could talk about the objective moral norms for sexuality, and this is the, primary and secondary purpose of the conjugal act and all these things. Or it's like, well, what's the experience of desire? What are we longing for? How is sex a part of God's plan? And what did he make us for in a way that we can relate to? And the Theology of the Body, as I talk about it, is really just the tip of the iceberg, because that was a manifestation of an entire philosophical framework where he looked at everything through that lens of what's the experience like? How can we make sense of our human experience grounded on the objective frameworks, but talking about it in such a way that it actually relates to where people are at today?
And that's so important what you just said there, grounded in the objective, because if we look only at our subjective experience and don't ground it in objective reality, we end up with subjectivism.
Exactly.
But if we, grounded in objective reality, have the courage to look at the depth of our experiences, we will discover in our subjective experience a subjective confirmation of the objective reality.
Of the objective, yes.
And when that happens, then the Catholic teaching, Catholic Church's vision does not feel foisted on us from the outside. It wells up from within and it resonates.
It explodes.
It explodes, yes.
It comes up from the inside. It's like like we were made like this the whole time.
It wells
this
up
always
to
there.
Eternal life, if we can use Christ's own expression, right? I will give you a water that if you drink it, it will well up in you to eternal life. It wells up in you. It's not imposed on you from the outside. It wells up from within you.
Yes. And this is the blueprint of the human person that John Paul II wrote out. And he articulated this in one main philosophical work called Person and Act, and then a secondary work of a collection of essays in Person and Community, and a number of his lectures. And a lot of these things are really difficult to understand.
Yes.
And, you're the one who gave me the hope and inspiration. It's like, okay, you can spend 20 or 30 or 40 or, however many years are lay ahead of us unpacking and reading this for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
And it's worth it. And there's so much gold to be mined here. And so when I started thinking about becoming a psychologist, I realized very quickly, I mean, this is really the scandal of psychology and mental health, is that in the secular world, there's no standard of mental health, period, full stop. Like, you know what your standard healthy body temperature is.
Right.
You know, if you're
Right.
at 98.6, you're healthy. And if you're at
Right.
104, you're not. Well, there's literally no standard
Wow.
for mental health for the human person. And we could do a
That's
whole nother
boggling.
episode on that. But it's like, yeah, we have diagnostic manuals, but they get updated every 3 years. It's like,
Right.
imagine updating healthy temperature in 3 years
Right.
because the committee got together and did some research. It's like, no, these things are not standardized. And why not? Of course they can't be standardized, because the secular world does not consider the spiritual dimension of the human person as essential.
Correct.
Well, we have that. We know that. We take that for granted. But John Paul II has actually articulated it. And so he uses the language of the day, including Freudian language. So he has a whole section on the subconscious.
Yep.
He talks about defense mechanisms. He talks about all of these things of consciousness, of subjectivity and experience. And then he makes sense of why we have memories, or why we have trauma responses, or why the body, what we believe it, what we talk about as psychosomatic. Like, what's the difference and what's the connection between the emotions and the mind and the body? How are we actually one whole being integrated? He's already written all of this out. So if there's any place to find a standard for mental health that the world of psychology
Beautiful.
could tap into, it's John Paul II.
Amen. Brother,
So this is what I've been working on.
Jazzed. I am so jazzed that you are working on this. Somebody needed to give his life to doing this, and I'm so glad you have done it. Wow, and are doing it. So this book, tell us the title and tell us when it will be available. And you're sending me an advanced copy, right?
Yes, I'm going to send you a copy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It's called The Personalist Cure. It's John Paul II's blueprint for a Catholic standard of psychology, and it will be coming out, hopefully, God willing, October 22nd.
Greg, I am thrilled that you are working on this. If anyone in the Catholic world were to take this up and run with it, it should be you.
Oh,
and
thank you. I really appreciate that.
It really warms my heart to reconnect with you. It's been a few years since we've had any length of conversation, and to see where you're going with all that John Paul II has meant to you, it's very, very encouraging to me. In closing, tell our viewers where they can learn more about you, what you're doing at Catholic Psych Institute, how they can get involved. If they wanted to receive help from your organization, where would they go, and what kind of help could they receive?
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you. I really, I could not imagine doing anything I'm doing or being where I'm at if it wasn't for your teaching and for your friendship over the years. And the way that you've spent your life unpacking and teaching the work of John Paul II has really shaped and formed my life in ways I can't even count. So I really mean that. I'm sure you heard that from a lot of students, but I really am so grateful for you and for your gift to the world as well.
Thank you, brother.
So we're at the Catholic Psych Institute, catholicpsych.com. We offer individual services, accompaniment, that we walk with people and doing some of the work that we that we sort of touched on here today, working through parts, working through people's struggles and challenges. So we do free consultations. We're not necessarily a fit for everybody, but we'll definitely help you figure out if there's something else that you need besides what we're doing. We are available outside of state lines and anywhere in the world because we have a remote model that we use. And that's where you can find out about the book that's coming up. We have different courses, other books that I've written. So check us out at catholicpsych.com.
Great. And we will have the link in the description below. So, Greg, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute delight to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Peace, brother.